When my daughter-in-law handed me a little blue box with a white ribbon, I felt my stomach drop before I even saw what was inside. It was Mother's Day morning and everything felt perfect. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, lighting up the counter where my coffee cake was cooling. The sweet smell of cinnamon and brown sugar filled the house. I'd set the table with my best dishes, the fancy ones my late husband Richard always said were too nice for every day. But this wasn't just any day. It was the first Mother's Day since Michael started opening up to me again after his father passed away. I heard the car pull into the driveway just before 10. Through the lace curtains, I watched my son step out first, then walk around to open the passenger door. That's when I saw her. Clara walked in like a model. She wore a cream-colored trench coat that moved with the breeze, and her high heels, those fancy red-bottom ones, clicked loudly on the brick path. Her hair was styled perfectly, like it took a lot of effort to look effortless. She looked beautiful and expensive. Too expensive for a third-grade teacher making $45,000 a year. But I pushed the thought away as I opened the door, pulling them both into hugs. Clara smelled like jasmine and something else. Nerves, maybe? Her perfume was a little too strong, like she'd applied an extra spritz. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom." Michael kissed my cheek, warm and genuine. He looked tired, those dark circles under his eyes I'd been noticing for months, but he was smiling. "We brought you something special," Clara said, her voice bright, almost too bright. She handed me the box. It was small, rectangular, that specific shade of robin's egg blue that makes your heart skip even before you know what's inside. Cartier. My hands trembled slightly as I untied the white ribbon. Michael and Clara stood watching me, but I noticed they weren't looking at each other. The box opened with a soft creak, and there it was, gleaming against white satin. A Cartier love bracelet. Rose gold. Delicate. Beautiful. And worth at least $10,000. I know because I'd admired one just like it in a magazine 3 months ago. Offhandedly mentioned it to Michael during one of our Sunday phone calls. I never expected, I never would have wanted. "Clara," I whispered, my throat tight. This is too much." "Nothing's too much for you, Mom Ruth." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I looked up at Michael, expecting to see pride, or maybe that sheepish expression he gets when he's spent more than he should have. Instead, his face had gone pale, completely drained of color. His jaw was clenched so tight, I could see the muscle twitching beneath his skin. "Clara." His voice was low, controlled, dangerous. "Where did you get the money for this?" The air in the room changed. Suddenly the coffee cake smell felt cloying, sickening. Clara's laugh came too quick, too high-pitched. "I've been saving, honey. I wanted to do something special for your mom. She deserves it. We need to talk." Michael's words were clipped. "Now." "Michael, it's Mother's Day." "Now, Clara." He took her elbow, not roughly but firmly, and guided her into the hallway just beyond the kitchen. I stood frozen, still holding that blue box, my heart hammering against my ribs. Their voices carried through the walls, hushed but urgent. "Told you the account was for emergencies." That was Michael, barely restrained fury. "You don't understand. I can explain." Clara pleading. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." Then silence, heavy, suffocating silence. When they returned, Clara's smile was plastered back on her face like a mask, but her hands were trembling. She folded them in front of her, trying to hide it, but I saw. A mother always sees. "Everything okay?" I asked, though I knew it wasn't. "Perfect," Clara chirped. Just a little miscommunication. You know how it is." I didn't know, but I was beginning to suspect. If you've ever received a gift that made you feel uneasy instead of grateful, you'll understand what I mean. It wasn't the bracelet itself. It was gorgeous. It was the wrongness of it all. The timing, the expense, the look on my son's face. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever known something was wrong before anyone said a word? I set the box down on the counter, carefully, deliberately. "Would you both like some coffee cake?" Clara excused herself to the powder room, her heels clicking a rapid retreat down the hallway. Through the corner of my eye, I watched her pull her phone from her purse, fingers shaking as she typed something. Her face was pale, frightened. Who was she texting? And why did she look absolutely terrified? Michael stood beside me at the counter, staring at the blue box like it was evidence at a crime scene, because that's exactly what it was. I didn't know it then, but that little blue box with its white ribbon would unravel 5 years of lies. Looking back now, I realized Clara had been performing for 5 years straight. Michael met her at a charity fundraiser for childhood literacy. How perfect is that? A beautiful elementary school teacher with a passion for helping underprivileged kids, and my son, the self-made millionaire who'd built Anderson Properties from the ground up. They were engaged within 6 months, married 3 months after that. I remember standing in the bridal suite, helping her into her dress, thinking how lucky Michael was, how lucky we all were. Clara taught third grade at Oakwood Elementary in the Dallas suburbs, pulling in about $45,000 a year. Not much, but she always said teaching wasn't about the money. It was about shaping young minds. She'd say it with this earnest look in her eyes, hand pressed to her heart, and I'd feel guilty for even thinking about finances. From the very beginning, she was the perfect daughter-in-law. Every Sunday, like clockwork, she and Michael would come for dinner. She'd bring fresh flowers, peonies in spring, sunflowers in summer, and she'd insist on helping me cook even though I told her to relax. We'd stand side by side at the stove, her chopping vegetables while I stirred the pot, and she'd ask about my week, about the ladies at church, about everything. She volunteered at St. Luke's Soup Kitchen every other Saturday, posted about it constantly on social media, photos of herself serving meals, smiling beside homeless veterans, captions about giving back and being the change. The comments would pour in, "You're such an inspiration. The world needs more people like you." I believed it all. She remembered birthdays, anniversaries, brought thoughtful gifts, a first edition copy of my favorite novel for Christmas, a cashmere shawl in my favorite shade of blue, expensive chocolates from that boutique shop downtown, always just slightly too expensive for a teacher's salary, but never so much that it raised alarm bells. Year 2 of their marriage, she showed up for Sunday dinner wearing these sneakers, Golden Goose, distressed white leather with a gold star on the side. I only knew the brand because my friend Carol's daughter works in fashion. $800 for a pair of shoes that looked deliberately worn out. "Clara, those are gorgeous," I'd said, pointing at her feet. She'd laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, these? The parents in my class pooled together for Teacher Appreciation Week. Can you believe it? I told them it was too much, but they insisted." Plausible. Touching even. Year 3, she mentioned a girls' weekend in Napa Valley. Wine tasting, spa treatments, 5-star hotel. I'd raised my eyebrows. "That sounds wonderful, honey. But isn't Napa expensive?" "My college roommate paid for most of it," she'd explained quickly. "Her parents own a timeshare, so the room was free. I just had to cover my flight." Always an explanation. Always just believable enough. Year 4, I noticed the Celine handbag. Tan leather, gold hardware, classic and understated, but unmistakably designer. $1,500 minimum. "Sample sale," she'd announced before I even asked. "You wouldn't believe the deals you can find if you know where to look." I'd nodded, smiled, pushed away the tiny voice whispering that something didn't add up. Then Richard died. 3 years ago, a massive heart attack in the garage while he was working on his beloved Chevy. Gone before the ambulance arrived, the world collapsed. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't figure out how to keep going. Clara stepped in immediately. She organized the funeral, fielded phone calls, brought meals, sat with me during the long, dark nights when grief felt like drowning. She offered to help manage paperwork, insurance forms, bank statements, all the administrative nightmares that come with death. "You shouldn't have to deal with this alone, Mom Ruth," she'd said, squeezing my hand. "Let me help, please." Richard had left me comfortable, not wealthy, but secure. The house was paid off. I had his pension, Social Security, and the life insurance payout, $250,000, invested conservatively in bonds and mutual funds. Clara suggested I sign a medical power of attorney, just in case. "God forbid something happens to you," she'd said gently. "Michael would be devastated if he couldn't make decisions for you." It made sense. Standard stuff. I signed without hesitation. She always wore the same perfume, Tom Ford Black Orchid. Heavy, sweet, almost cloying. It would linger in my house long after she left, soaking into the curtains, the upholstery. Some days I loved it. Other days it made me feel vaguely nauseous. Looking back, maybe that was my subconscious trying to tell me something. There were moments, tiny, fleeting moments, when my instinct screamed that something was off. But I'd dismiss it as grief or maybe jealousy. Was I threatened by the new woman in Michael's life? Was I being one of those difficult mother-in-laws who could never think anyone was good enough for her son? I'd push the feelings down, bury them under guilt and gratitude. But there was one moment I'd completely forgotten until now. About a year after Richard died, I'd come home early from church. The choir practice had been canceled, and found Clara in my home office. She was sitting at Richard's old desk, laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. The second she heard me, she slammed it shut. "Mom, Ruth!" She jumped up, hand pressed to her chest. "You scared me. What are you doing in here?" "Just checking your email like you asked." Her smile was wide, practiced. "You said you were having trouble logging in, remember?" I hadn't asked her to check anything. I didn't remember having trouble logging in. But grief does strange things to memory, doesn't it? I'd forgotten entire conversations in those foggy months after Richard's death, so I'd nodded, thanked her, and let it go. I'd completely erased it from my mind. Until that Mother's Day, watching Clara text someone in a panic, her hands shaking, her face drained of color, I finally understood what my gut had been trying to tell me for 5 years. Something was very, very wrong, and it had been wrong for a long time. The sound of Clara's car pulling away felt like a held breath finally releasing. Michael stood at the window, watching until her taillights disappeared around the corner. Then his shoulders sagged, and he pressed his forehead against the glass. "Michael?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. He didn't turn around. "Mom, we need to talk." My kitchen had never felt so cold. The coffee cake sat untouched on the counter, the Mother's Day cards still propped against the fruit bowl. Everything looked normal, painfully, mockingly normal, while my son stood there looking like he might shatter into pieces. "Sit down, honey. Let me get us some coffee." My hands trembled as I poured 2 mugs, the dark liquid sloshing slightly over the rim. Michael sat at the table, Richard's old spot, and ran both hands through his hair the way he used to do before big exams in college. I set his mug down and slid into the chair across from him. We sat in silence for a moment, the wall clock ticking steadily, completely indifferent to the bomb about to detonate in my kitchen. "I've been holding this in for weeks," Michael finally said, his voice rough. "I didn't want to ruin Mother's Day, but after that bracelet—" He laughed bitterly. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine." My chest tightened. "What's going on?" He looked up at me, and I saw fear in my son's eyes, real bone-deep fear. "Mom, I think Clara's been stealing from me." The words hung in the air like smoke. Stealing. It started about 6 months ago, little things I tried to explain away. He pulled out his phone, fingers swiping rapidly. A $3,000 withdrawal from the business account labeled office supplies. I asked Clara about it. She handles the books, and she said she'd ordered new furniture for the reception area. And nothing arrived. When I pressed her, she said the order was delayed, then that she'd canceled it and gotten a refund. But I never saw the money come back. I gripped my coffee mug tighter, feeling the heat seep into my palms. Then the credit card charges started showing up. Luxury stores, high-end boutiques. She said she was buying gifts for my top clients. His jaw clenched. "But my clients never mentioned receiving anything." "Did you confront her?" "Every time. And every time she had an explanation. She'd get defensive, accuse me of not trusting her, say I was being controlling." He shook his head. "She'd cry, and I'd feel like the bad guy for even asking." I knew that tactic. The performance of wounded innocence. 2 months ago, I found a credit card statement in her car. Capital One, $40,000 balance, under her name, but linked to our address. His voice cracked. $40,000, Mom. Designer clothes, jewelry, cash advances. Oh, Michael. I hired someone, a forensic accountant, Raymond Torres. He used to work FBI financial crimes. Michael's hands were shaking now, coffee sloshing in his mug. I needed to know if I was losing my mind or if something was really wrong. What did he find? Michael set down his mug and pulled folded papers from his jacket pocket. They looked worn, like he'd been carrying them for days, unfolding and refolding them, hoping the numbers would change. Raymond found transactions linked to accounts I didn't recognize. At first, I thought they were Clara's personal accounts, but then he traced them further and he spread the papers on the table between us. Mom, when did you give Clara access to your investment account? My blood turned to ice. I never did. His face went completely white. That's what I was afraid of. He turned one of the printouts toward me. I recognized the Fidelity letterhead immediately. That was where Richard had invested my life insurance payout, safe and conservative, meant to last me through retirement. But the transactions listed weren't ones I recognized. Transferred a Wells Fargo account ending in 7392, $2,500. Same transaction, repeated monthly, going back 18 months. I don't have a Wells Fargo account, I whispered. I know. Michael's voice was hollow. But someone opened one in your name. The math hit me like a fist to the stomach. $2,500 a month. 18 months. $45,000. Mom, when Dad died, your life insurance was $250,000, right? I nodded, unable to speak. When's the last time you checked your balance? Quarterly statements. I trust my financial advisor, so I just file them. Even as I said it, I realized how foolish it sounded. Michael was already opening his laptop. Log in, check it now. My fingers felt numb on the keyboard. Password, security questions. The loading screen felt like it took a year. Current balance, $198,247.63. The room tilted. It should have been around $250,000, maybe a bit more with conservative growth. Instead, $52,000 had vanished into thin air. I'm going to be sick. I pressed my hand to my chest, the pressure building like a vice. Mom, breathe, just breathe. Michael grabbed my arm, steadying me. Do you remember signing anything Clara brought you? Any documents, forms, anything? I tried to think past the roaring in my ears. Just the medical power of attorney. You were there when the lawyer drew that up. Anything else? And then I remembered. She brought some papers a few months after your dad died. Said my financial advisor recommended rolling over some funds into accounts with better interest rates. There were so many forms after Richard passed. Insurance claims, beneficiary updates, estate paperwork. I signed where she told me to sign. The truth crashed over me like a wave. I'd been so lost in grief, so grateful for her help, that I'd handed her the keys to everything. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. She forged documents, Mom, or tricked you into signing financial power of attorney. That's how she accessed your accounts. Have you ever had a moment where everything you thought you knew just shattered? When you realized someone you trusted had been playing you for years? That's what it felt like. Standing on solid ground one second, free-falling the next. I looked at my son, really looked at him. The dark circles under his eyes. The weight loss I'd attributed to work stress. The way his hands shook. How long have you known? I suspected for 2 months. Raymond confirmed it 3 days ago. His voice broke. Mom, there's more. He thinks the Wells Fargo account isn't the only one. He thinks she's been running this scheme since Dad died. Systematic, calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing. Something shifted inside me then. The grief, the shock, the betrayal. It crystallized into something cold and clear and absolutely unshakable. Rage. Not the hot, screaming kind. The ice-cold, methodical kind that plans and executes and doesn't stop until justice is served. I stood up, placed both palms flat on the table, and looked my son straight in the eye. Then we're going to find every penny, I said, my voice steady as steel, and she's going to answer for all of it. That night, I barely slept. But when the sun rose the next morning, I wasn't a grieving widow anymore. I was a woman on a mission. Raymond Torres had the kind of eyes that saw through lies, the way an X-ray sees through skin. We met him at a coffee shop in downtown Dallas, deliberately public, deliberately anonymous. He was in his early 50s, silver hair cropped close, wearing a pressed button-down that somehow looked both professional and forgettable. The kind of man who could blend into a crowd but whose attention you'd never want focused on your finances. Mrs. Anderson? he said, shaking my hand with a firm, no-nonsense grip. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." "Call me Ruth." I slid into the booth across from him, Michael beside me. "And thank you for helping us." Raymond had spent 15 years with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit before going private. Michael found him through a business contact who'd used him during a corporate embezzlement case. If anyone could untangle Clara's web, it was him. He opened a leather portfolio, the pages inside covered in highlighted numbers, sticky notes, and handwritten annotations. This was a man who lived in the details. "I've traced approximately 73 transactions over the past 3 years," he began, his voice clinical and steady. "What we're looking at is sophisticated, methodical theft." He turned the first page toward us. Account summaries, transaction histories, copies of signatures. Mine, but not quite mine. Close enough to pass a casual glance, but under scrutiny, the loop of my R was wrong, the slant too sharp. "She forged these?" I touched the paper, feeling sick. "Some, yes. Others I believe you actually signed. But you were told they were something else. Medical forms, rollover paperwork, beneficiary updates." The full picture emerged like a photograph developing in chemicals, each detail sharpening into horrible clarity. Account 1. Wells Fargo checking opened 18 months ago, using my social security number and a forged signature. Monthly transfers of $2,500 from my Fidelity account. Total stolen, $45,000. Account 2. Chase Savings opened 2 years ago. $12,000 in fraudulent deposits sourced from cash advances on credit cards opened in my name. Account 3. Capital One credit card, $28,000 limit, maxed out completely. Charges at Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom, luxury hotels, cash advances. Total damage to your accounts, Ruth, is approximately $92,000, either stolen directly or fraudulent debt created in your name. $92,000. The number felt obscene. How did she hide this? Michael's voice was tight, controlled. "Mom gets statements, I get business reports. How did none of this show up?" Raymond flipped to another page. "She created a fake email address. Look, ruthanderson.fidelityegmail.com. Close enough to official that automated emails would go unnoticed. She rerouted your paper statements to a P.O. box in Plano." "And the business? Accounts?" Michael asked. "She'd take small amounts, then replace them with money from your personal accounts, creating a circular pattern that's hard to track. She'd mark withdrawals as legitimate expenses, office supplies, client gifts, contractor payments. You'd see the deduction but assume Clara had handled it." "Because I trusted her to handle it," Michael said bitterly. Raymond nodded. "That's what made her effective. She had legitimate access, legitimate explanations, and you had no reason to doubt her." "Where did the money go?" I asked. He pulled out another sheet. Credit card statements, receipts, purchase records. Designer clothing, handbags, shoes, spa services, luxury travel, and approximately $30,000 in untraceable cash withdrawals. Then he showed us something that made my stomach drop. She also created a shell company, LV Consulting, LLC, registered under her maiden name, Laura Vance, to a virtual office address. Laura Vance. I'd almost forgotten Clara's maiden name. "What's the company for?" Michael asked. "Legitimizing theft. Watch." Raymond traced a line of transactions with his pen. "Clara writes a check from Anderson Properties to LV Consulting for marketing services. That money goes into the LLC account, which she controls. Then she transfers it to her personal accounts or withdraws it as cash. On paper, it looks like a normal business expense." Michael's jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. That afternoon, I bought a brown leather journal from a stationery shop near my house, the kind with thick cream-colored pages and a ribbon bookmark. I opened it to the first page and wrote at the top in careful script, "Documentation of Clara's theft." Underneath, I began recording everything: dates, amounts, accounts, every piece of evidence Raymond uncovered, every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. It became my ritual. Each evening, I'd sit at Richard's old desk with a cup of tea and update the journal. The scratch of pen on paper felt therapeutic, like I was taking back control one word at a time. Meanwhile, Clara kept visiting. She came that Thursday, same as always, carrying a bouquet of tulips and wearing a new pair of shoes I didn't recognize. Probably $500 minimum. "How are you feeling, Mom Ruth?" she asked, setting the flowers in a vase. "You seemed a little off on Sunday." "Just tired, sweetheart." I smiled, watching her carefully. "You know how Mother's Day can be emotional." She nodded sympathetically. "I hope you loved the bracelet. I saved for over a year." The lie came so easily. No hesitation, no tell. Just pure practice deception. "It's beautiful," I said. "But Clara, you shouldn't spend so much. Teachers don't make enough as it is." "Oh, I'm very careful with money." She laughed, that bright, false sound. "Actually, I've been thinking about going back to school. Getting my master's degree. Might need to dip into my savings." Tilted my head, playing dumb. "I thought you said you'd been saving for years. Should be plenty, right?" Her eye twitched, just for a fraction of a second. "Well, inflation. Everything's more expensive now." I documented it all that night. The new shoes, the master's degree comment, the way her eye twitched when I questioned her savings. Michael struggled. I'd find him in my garden sometimes, pulling weeds with methodical violence, dirt under his fingernails. "I keep thinking about our wedding," he said one evening, not looking up from the flower bed. "Her vows. She promised to love and cherish our family. Was any of it real?" I knelt beside him, my knees protesting against the hard ground. "Son, love doesn't mean ignoring the truth. It means facing it, even when it breaks your heart." 2 weeks into our investigation, Raymond called. His voice on the phone was tense. "Ruth, I found something else. I need you and Michael to come to my office. Now." We drove in silence, the afternoon sun beating through the windshield. Raymond had spreadsheets pulled up on 3 monitors when we arrived. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Clara's LLC, LV Consulting, received a $50,000 payment from Anderson Properties last month. He turned to Michael. "Did you authorize a payment to LV Consulting?" Michael's face went ashen. That's the contractor account. Only Clara has access. She processes the invoices." "There's no contractor, is there?" I already knew the answer. "No," Raymond confirmed. "LV Consulting has no website, no employees, no office. It exists solely on paper." Clara wasn't just stealing from family. She was embezzling from the business. The betrayal was deeper than we'd imagined, and if we didn't stop her soon, she'd bleed us dry. We planned Clara's unmasking the way generals plan a battle, carefully, methodically, with every variable accounted for. Raymond spread documents across my kitchen table like a military strategist mapping enemy territory. Michael sat across from him, legal pad in hand, his jaw set with grim determination. "We need her to commit to her lies before we present proof," Raymond said, tapping his pen against a stack of bank statements. "Once she's on record, in front of witnesses, she can't walk it back." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already knew. "A gathering, somewhere she feels safe, surrounded by people she thinks she's fooled." He looked at me steadily. "Your birthday's coming up in 2 weeks, isn't it?" "My 65th. I'd planned to spend it quietly, maybe dinner with Michael. Now it would become something else entirely. We invite people who matter," Raymond continued. "People whose presence will either validate our case or make it impossible for her to run." We made a list. Clara's parents, Robert and Susan, retired school teachers living on a fixed income in a modest ranch house in Fort Worth. They had no idea their daughter was a thief. Their presence would serve 2 purposes: moral weight and witnesses to her confession. James Chen, Michael's business partner and COO of Anderson Properties. James had been asking questions about the books for months. He could verify every fraudulent invoice, every phantom contractor payment. Raymond himself, introduced as Richard's old friend from the Navy. A cover story, but believable enough. His role: observe, document, intervene when needed. Pastor Williams from St. Luke's, the moral authority figure. Clara volunteered at his soup kitchen, posted about it constantly, let him see who she really was. My sister Carol, sharp as a knife and twice as cutting when she needed to be. Carol had never fully trusted Clara, always said there was something too polished about her. She'd be a witness, and back up if I faltered. "What's the play?" Michael asked, his voice hollow. I took a breath. "I'll be the gracious hostess. I'll mention casually that I'm thinking about withdrawing money from my investments. Maybe 30,000 for a kitchen remodel. I'll ask Clara's advice." "She'll panic," Raymond predicted. "The money's already gone. She'll either discourage you from accessing it, offer to handle the paperwork herself, or change the subject entirely. All of those reactions are incriminating. And I'll bring up her master's degree," Michael added quietly. "Ask if we're budgeting for it. See how she explains having money she shouldn't have." Raymond nodded. "The key is letting her lie. Let her paint herself into a corner. Then we present the evidence." The plan was set. That night, I found Michael in my garden, sitting on the ground beside the tomato plants Richard had loved. His shoulders shook silently. I lowered myself down beside him, ignoring my protesting knees. "I keep thinking about our wedding day," he whispered. "She stood at that altar and promised to love and cherish our family. She looked me in the eyes and vowed to be faithful. Was any of it real?" I pulled my son close, let him rest his head on my shoulder the way he used to when he was small. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe she meant it in the moment. Maybe she loved the idea of who she wanted to be." I stroked his hair. "But somewhere along the way, she chose deception, and that choice is on her, not you." I should have seen it. Betrayal doesn't just steal money, Michael. My voice was soft but firm. It steals your ability to trust your own judgment. But you didn't fail. She did. The days leading up to my birthday passed in a blur of preparation. I cleaned the house with almost meditative focus, vacuuming corners that didn't need it, polishing silver that was already spotless. The physical work kept my hands busy while my mind rehearsed what was coming. I baked Clara's favorite lemon cake, the recipe I'd made for her every birthday since she married Michael. The irony wasn't lost on me, preparing her favorite dessert for the day we'd destroy her lies. I set the dining table with Richard's good china, the set his mother had given us as a wedding gift. Each plate, each fork carried the weight of family history. It felt right, somehow, to honor that history while protecting it from someone who tried to steal it. The Cartier bracelet, that beautiful, damning piece of evidence, I placed in its blue velvet box on the mantel. Let her see it. Let her remember what started this unraveling. The night before the party, my phone rang. Clara. "Mom Ruth, I'm so excited for tomorrow." Her voice was bright, performative. "I'm bringing a special gift for you, something to show how much you mean to me." My stomach turned. Another expensive gift, bought with stolen money, designed to ease her guilt or deepen my trust. "You don't need to bring anything, sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice warm. "Just having you there is gift enough." "Nonsense, you deserve the world." After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room, the phone still in my hand. If you were in my position, could you sit across the table from someone who betrayed you and smile? Could you make small talk, serve them cake, and wait patiently while they dug themselves deeper? I wasn't sure I could, but I was going to try. The morning of the party, I woke at dawn. Sleep had been fitful, my dreams tangled with images of Richard, of Michael's wedding, of Clara's smile that never quite reached her eyes. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, studying the woman looking back. She looked older than I remembered. Grief had carved lines around her mouth. Betrayal had added shadows beneath her eyes. But those eyes, they were clear, steady, determined. I practiced my lines, my tone. "Clara, I'm thinking of remodeling the kitchen. What do you think?" Casual. Light. Like I didn't know she'd already stolen the money I was pretending to access. "For Richard," I whispered to my reflection. "For Michael. For every person who trusted her and got stabbed in the back." At 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. I smoothed my dress, took one steadying breath, and opened the door. Clara stood on the porch holding a dozen white roses, wearing a silk dress I'd never seen before, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. By 3 o'clock, my living room buzzed with the comfortable noise of family gathering. Laughter, overlapping conversations, the clink of glasses. Clara's parents arrived first. Robert and Susan, both retired teachers, brought a grocery store bouquet and a card they'd clearly picked out with care. Susan hugged me tight, smelling of drugstore perfume and kindness. 65. You don't look a day over 50, Ruth. Pastor Williams came next, booming voice and warm handshake, followed by my sister Carol, sharp-eyed and carrying a bottle of wine that cost more than she'd ever admit. James Chen, Michael's business partner, arrived in a pressed shirt and khakis, gift bag in hand. He'd always been the quieter half of Anderson Properties, methodical, detail-oriented, the one who actually read the fine print. And Raymond, introduced as Richard's old Navy buddy, fit seamlessly into the group with practiced ease. Clara played hostess like she was born to it, refreshing drinks, asking about everyone's week, laughing at Pastor William's stories. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was perfectly at ease. But I noticed the tightness around her eyes, the way she kept glancing at Michael, the death grip on her wine glass. "Mom, Ruth, this is for you." Clara handed me a large, flat package wrapped in cream paper and silk ribbon. I unwrapped it carefully while everyone watched. It was stunning. A custom oil painting, maybe 2 feet by 3 feet, of a photograph from our 40th anniversary. Richard and me, dancing in our backyard, golden hour light making everything glow. My breath caught, not because it was beautiful, though it was, but because I knew exactly how much custom oil paintings cost. $3,500 minimum. "Clara," my voice came out strained. This is too much. How did you afford this?" She waved her hand dismissively, smiling for the room. "Oh, I've been very careful with money, saving for years. You deserve something special." Susan beamed from across the room. "That's my girl, always so frugal. Even as a teenager, she saved every penny." Michael's voice cut through the warm atmosphere like a blade. "Frugal." Everyone turned to look at him. "Honey, you just bought Mom a $10,000 Cartier bracelet last week." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Clara's laugh sounded like glass breaking. "That was my savings, a separate account." "What separate account?" Michael's tone was carefully neutral, but I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. "We have joint finances. We've had joint finances since we got married. From before we were married, obviously." Clara's smile was frozen in place. Raymond leaned forward, playing his role perfectly. "Wow, Clara, you must have been an incredible saver in your 20s, building up enough for a $10,000 bracelet and a custom painting while working as a teacher? That's impressive." Clara's knuckles went white around her wine glass. I'm just good with money." Dinner was beautifully normal on the surface. Roast chicken with crispy skin, rosemary potatoes, green beans almondine. I'd set the table with Richard's mother's china, each plate a silent witness to what was unfolding. Carol kept the conversation moving, bless her, asking about everyone's summer plans, but I could see her watching Clara with that predatory attention she usually reserved for crossword puzzles. I waited until dessert was served, slices of lemon cake on delicate plates, before I made my move. "I've been thinking," I said casually, spooning sugar into my coffee. "The kitchen's looking dated. I'd like to do a remodel. Maybe pull $30,000 from my Fidelity account." I turned to Clara with a guileless smile. "You helped me with those rollover forms after Richard died. Do you think that's wise?" Clara went pale. Actually pale, like someone had drained the blood from her face. I think you should wait. The market's volatile right now." "Actually," Raymond interjected mildly, "the market's been quite stable lately, and Ruth's investments are mostly conservative bonds, very liquid." "Well, I just think—" Clara's voice pitched higher. "Maybe wait. You never know." I tilted my head, watching her squirm. "But I checked my balance last week. I should have plenty, right? Unless something's changed?" "No, no, of course not. I just meant—" She grabbed her water glass, hand trembling. "It's always good to be cautious." Before I could press further, Robert cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "Actually, since we're talking about money—" He glanced at Susan. "My knee surgery got scheduled. Insurance is covering most of it, but we're looking at $8,000 out of pocket. We're working out a payment plan with the hospital." The words hung in the air. Clara sat up straighter, and I recognized the look. She was about to do something generous, something that would make her look good. "Dad, don't worry about it." Her voice was bright, confident. "I can lend you $10,000 to cover it. Easy." Silence fell over the table like a heavy blanket. Susan's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Sweetheart, that's so generous, but where would you get that kind of money? You and Michael just bought that new house. The down payment alone must have been. I have savings, Mom. Clara's voice took on a defensive edge. I'm not irresponsible. Michael set down his fork. The clink of metal on china rang out sharp and final in the quiet room. Clara. His voice was soft, dangerous. We've been married 5 years. We've had joint accounts the entire time. Where exactly is this separate savings account? Clara looked around the table, seeing the questions forming on every face. Why are you interrogating me? At your mother's birthday? Pastor Williams shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps we should. No. My voice was calm, steady. It's fine, Pastor. I'd like to know, too. I looked directly at Clara. When you helped me with my financial paperwork after Richard died, you said you were just organizing things. Did you open any new accounts in my name? Clara stood abruptly, chair scraping against hardwood. I think I need some air. Sit down, Clara. Michael's words were steel wrapped in velvet. Every eye in the room locked on her. She sat. James Chen had been quiet all evening, but now he spoke up, pulling a paper from his jacket pocket. While we're discussing finances, Clara, I've been meaning to ask you about an invoice. LV Consulting. Does that ring a bell? It's billed Anderson Properties $50,000 over the past year. Clara's breathing went shallow. That's a legitimate contractor, marketing services. Funny thing. James unfolded the paper. I called the number on the invoice. Disconnected, I drove to the address listed. He looked up, eyes hard. It's a UPS store mailbox in Plano. The walls were closing in. I could see it in Clara's face. The panic, the calculation, the desperate search for an exit that didn't exist. Her fingers clutched the napkin in her lap, twisting it into knots. Her breathing came rapid and shallow. I leaned forward, and when I spoke, my voice was gentle, a final offer of mercy. Clara, if you've made mistakes, now is the time to tell the truth. We can figure this out as a family. For just a moment, her face crumbled. I saw the real Clara underneath, frightened, ashamed, vulnerable. The mask slipped, then it hardened again, reforming into something ugly. I can't believe this. Her voice shook with false outrage. I can't believe you're all ganging up on me. I've done nothing but love this family. I've taken care of you, Mom Ruth. I've been there for you through everything. I've supported Michael, managed the household, handled everything. Her voice rose. And this is how you repay me? With accusations, with ambushes? She was trying to flip it. Play the victim, make us the villains. This is the moment liars always choose, attack and deflect, or confess and beg forgiveness. I watched her eyes, wondering which path she'd take. Raymond stood slowly, reaching into the leather bag beside his chair. He pulled out a manila folder, thick with papers, and slid it across the table toward Clara. Before you say anything else, I think you should see these. Clara's hand trembled as she opened the folder. I watched her face as she flipped through the pages. Bank statements, forged signatures, mine, almost perfect but not quite. Transaction records, emails from accounts she thought were hidden. Receipts, evidence of every lie, every theft, every manipulation. Her face went from flushed red to pale white to ashen gray in the span of seconds. Where did you get these? The words came out as barely a whisper. Raymond's voice was flat, professional, utterly without emotion. I'm a forensic accountant, Clara. This is what I do. The room held its breath, waiting to see if she'd finally tell the truth or dig the hole deeper. Clara stared at the papers spread before her like they were written in a language she couldn't comprehend. The silence stretched. I counted. 1, 2, 3. 15 seconds of absolute quiet while the grandfather clock ticked in the corner and nobody moved. Then her face crumpled. It wasn't theatrical. It was the collapse of someone who'd been holding up a false ceiling for so long that when it finally came down, it buried her completely. I never meant for it to go this far. Her voice cracked, barely audible. Michael leaned forward. How far did you mean for it to go, Clara? She pressed her hands over her face, shoulders heaving with silent sobs. When she finally looked up, mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint dissolving. It started 3 years ago. I was, I was bored. You were always working, Michael. Always at the office, always on your phone. I felt invisible. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I saw an ad for online poker, just for fun, just something to do. Poker. Michael's voice was hollow. I won $5,000 the first month. A strange, distant smile flickered across Clara's face. It felt like magic, like I'd discovered the secret skill nobody knew I had. The rush when those cards turned over. She shook her head. Then I lost 3,000 and I thought, I was sure I could win it back. I'd heard this story before. Different details, same shape, the classic spiral. One more hand, just one more night. I had a system. I was so close to figuring it out. Her words tumbled faster now, like a dam breaking. I started driving to Windstar Casino in Oklahoma. Told you I was at teacher conferences, high-stakes tables. I'd win a little, lose more, win big, lose everything. Robert made a sound like he'd been punched. I borrowed from the business account first. Clara continued, not looking at Michael. Just 2,000. I was absolutely certain I'd replace it before anyone noticed. Let me guess, James said quietly. You lost it all in one weekend. Clara nodded, miserable. That's when I saw Mom Ruth's paperwork. After Richard died, all those documents about the life insurance, the investment accounts, and I thought... She closed her eyes. Just once. Just enough to get even. 5,000. My chest tightened. I lost it. Took more. Lost that too. It became this blur. The money, the casino, the lies stacking on top of lies. The gifts. She laughed bitterly. The expensive gifts were supposed to make me feel like I was still a good person. Like if I was generous enough, kind enough, it would balance out what I was taking. The irony was suffocating. She'd bought my love with my own stolen money. Susan was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. How could you? We raised you better than this. I'm sick, Mom. Clara's voice broke. I know that now. I'm sick. Robert sat with his face in his hands, saying nothing. Michael stood slowly, walked to the window, his back rigid. When he finally turned around, his eyes were red-rimmed and devastated. Did you ever love me? The question came out raw. Or was I just the bank? I love you. Clara's voice pitched high with desperation. I love you so much. That's exactly why I couldn't tell you. I couldn't bear to disappoint you, to have you look at me the way you're looking at me now. So instead, you stole from my mother. Michael's voice shook. From the business my father and I built from nothing. That was your solution? Clara had no answer. I felt everything and nothing all at once. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me felt pity, because addiction is a disease, even if it doesn't excuse the devastation it causes. Mostly, I just felt tired. Clara, my voice came out quiet but clear. Did you ever think about what you were stealing? That money was from Richard's life insurance, the payout for his death. You were gambling with the price of my husband's life. I'm sorry. She sobbed into her hands. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back 3 years of peace. Sorry doesn't undo the nights I counted pennies while you threw thousands away on cards. Raymond's voice cut through, clinical and unemotional. Let's talk numbers. 92,000 from Ruth, 73,000 from Anderson Properties, 40,000 in credit card debt in Ruth's name. Total, $205,000. All gone? Susan whispered. All gone, Raymond confirmed. Pastor Williams spoke gently. Clara, have you sought help for this addiction? I went to Gamblers Anonymous once, about a year ago. Clara's voice was small. I sat in the circle, listened to people share their stories, and when it was my turn, She trailed off. I couldn't say it out loud. I left after one meeting and never went back. There are legal consequences here, Raymond said. Embezzlement, identity theft, fraud. This isn't just a family matter anymore. Clara's head snapped up, eyes wild with panic. She looked at Michael, pleading. Please, please don't prosecute me. I'll get help. I'll pay every penny back. I'll do anything, please. Michael walked to the window, staring out at nothing. When he turned back, his voice was barely a whisper. I don't even know who you are. I stood, my own eyes dry and clear. Michael, this isn't your decision alone. She stole from me. She forged my signature. She used my grief as an opportunity. I turned to face Clara directly. I'll give you one chance to make this right. You check into a treatment facility tomorrow. You surrender every account, every card, every asset. You cooperate fully with Raymond's audit, and then we'll decide about legal action. Clara nodded frantically. Yes, yes, anything, I promise. And Clara, my voice turned to ice. You're not welcome in my home until you've paid back every cent and truly proven you've changed. That could take years. It might be never. Clara left. That night with her parents, Susan's arm around her shaking shoulders, Robert walking ahead in stunned silence. I watched from the doorway as they got into their car. Clara looked back once, her face blotchy and destroyed. Part of me felt victory. Most of me just felt sad. Within 48 hours, Clara was gone. Meadowbrook Recovery Center, a 90-day inpatient program 2 hours outside Dallas, specializing in gambling addiction. Michael drove her there himself, didn't tell me until after, and came back looking like he'd aged a decade. I can't go back to the house, he said, standing in my doorway with a duffel bag. Not yet. So my son moved into the guest room, the one that still had his high school basketball trophies on the shelf. The walls in my house are thin. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard the shower running, and then, unmistakably, the sound of my grown son sobbing. I sat on the edge of my bed, hands pressed over my mouth, my own heart shattering for him. Raymond filed his report with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office on a Tuesday morning. The prosecutor assigned to the case was Amanda Reeves, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in white-collar crime. She laid out my options in her office overlooking downtown Dallas. We can pursue felony charges, embezzlement, identity theft, fraud. She's looking at 5 to 10 years. Amanda folded her hands on the desk. Or we can structure a restitution agreement. Full repayment, probation, continued treatment. No jail time if she complies. I didn't hesitate. Restitution. Amanda raised an eyebrow. You're sure? What she did, I don't want her in prison. I want my money back, and I want her to get help. The agreement was drawn up within a week. $205,000 plus interest. 5 years probation. Monthly payments garnished from whatever wages she earned. Mandatory continued addiction treatment, and no contact with me without supervision. Clara's parents appeared at my door 3 days later, Robert holding an envelope with shaking hands. We took out a second mortgage, Susan said, her voice breaking. $30,000. It's not everything, but it's what we can do. Please, we're so ashamed. We raised her. We should have seen the signs. I stared at the envelope, my throat tight. I can't take this. You didn't do anything wrong. Please, Ruth. Robert's eyes were red. Let us do this. I accepted it, but with one condition. It was a loan to Clara, not forgiveness of her debt. They agreed. Michael started attending Al-Anon meetings for families of addicts. He'd come home with pamphlets and coffee breath, sitting at my kitchen table processing what he was learning. They said addicts are expert liars, that the mood swings, the defensiveness, the secrecy, those were all signs. He looked up at me, guilt written across his face. I should have seen it. Don't do that to yourself, I said firmly. Addicts have to lie. It's how they survive. You're not to blame for believing someone you loved. I found my own support group, Surviving Financial Abuse, meeting Tuesday nights in a community center that smelled of stale coffee and floor wax, metal folding chairs arranged in a circle, 7. Faces all carrying the same shame I'd been carrying. Patricia, 70 years old, lost $300,000 to her son's opioid addiction. He'd drained her retirement, forged checks, sold her jewelry. Jin, 68, discovered her daughter had forged a will, trying to cut out her siblings. Others had been exploited by spouses, caregivers, financial advisors. I thought I was uniquely foolish, I admitted during my third meeting. You're not, Patricia said gently. This is an epidemic, and it's not your fault. At home, small rituals marked my healing. I returned the Cartier bracelet, got 7,000 back, which felt like a small victory. The empty spot on the mantel became a reminder of what I'd survived. In my garden, I planted new lavender. The act of digging in soil, of putting something beautiful into the ground and trusting it to grow, it felt like renewal. 3 months in, Clara's counselor forwarded a letter. I read it alone at my kitchen table, afternoon light slanting through the window. I can't undo what I did. I can only promise I'm facing it now. I'm learning that I used gambling to numb feelings I couldn't handle. Inadequacy, fear of failure, the pressure of being perfect. None of that excuses theft. Nothing excuses what I did to you. If I spend the rest of my life paying you back and you still never forgive me, that's what I deserve. I cried then. For the first time since the confrontation, I let myself cry. Not for Clara, for the loss of what could have been, for the daughter-in-law I thought I had, for the family that would never exist. That weekend, Michael asked me the question I knew was coming. Do you think I should give her another chance? She's sick, right? Doesn't she deserve compassion? I chose my words carefully. She deserves the chance to heal and make amends. But Michael, you deserve a partner you can trust. Only you can decide if you can ever trust her again. He nodded slowly, staring into his coffee. I don't think I can. That night, he filed for divorce. They say time heals all wounds, but I think that's a lie. Time just teaches you how to carry the scar. 1 year later, Mother's Day arrived again, but this time, I spent it differently. Carol came over in the morning with cinnamon rolls from the bakery Richard used to love. Patricia and Jen from my support group joined us for lunch on the patio, the four of us laughing over iced tea and stories that had nothing to do with the people who'd betrayed us. Chosen family, I'd learned, sometimes means more than blood. Michael arrived in the afternoon carrying a simple bouquet of daisies, cheerful, uncomplicated, honest. He looked different, lighter somehow, like he'd finally set down a weight he'd been carrying. You look good, sweetheart, I said, pulling him into a hug. I feel good, Mom. And he meant it. The divorce had finalized 4 months ago. Clean, uncontested. Clara signed everything without argument. Michael had taken a 3-month sabbatical, traveled to Colorado, started therapy. When he came back, he and James rebuilt Anderson Properties' financial controls from the ground up. Dual signature requirements, third-party audits, separation of duties. I'm learning to trust again, he told me, settling into the patio chair. But differently, with verification. He was seeing someone new. Vanessa, an ER nurse with kind eyes and zero tolerance for dishonesty. They'd met at a coffee shop of all places. She knew everything about Clara from the start. I told her on the second date, Michael said. Figured if it was going to scare her off, better to know early. And? He smiled. She said everyone has baggage. At least mine came with lessons learned. I liked her already. Clara, according to reports from Robert and Susan, was living in their small apartment in Fort Worth, working 2 jobs, teacher's aide during the day, restaurant server at night. She hadn't missed a single restitution payment, $1,200 a month like clockwork. She attended Gamblers Anonymous 3 times a week, had a sponsor. Was doing the work, her parents said. Last month she'd sent me a card. I'd held it for a long time before setting it aside, unopened. I wasn't ready. She's really trying, Ruth. Susan had told me over the phone, her voice tentative. She's humble, ashamed, working so hard. I hope that's true, I'd replied gently. Time will tell. As for me, I'd recovered $52,000 so far, $30,000 from Robert and Susan's mortgage, $22,000 from Clara's payments. But more than the money, I'd rebuilt my security. New financial advisor who met with me quarterly in person. Every account now had 2-factor authentication. Michael held medical power of attorney only, nothing financial. I'd frozen my credit to prevent anyone from opening new accounts in my name. The practical changes were easy. The emotional ones took longer. Michael and I had grown closer through shared trauma. Sunday dinners became sacred again. Just the 2 of us, sometimes Vanessa, cooking together and talking about everything. I'd started leading the support group, sharing my story with newly betrayed family members who thought they were alone, and I'd begun speaking at community centers across Dallas. Protecting yourself from financial exploitation, the flyers read, My face, gray-haired and serious, printed beside bullet points about warning signs. I thought I was too smart to be a victim, I told audiences. That's exactly what made me vulnerable. I partnered with the Texas Elder Abuse Task Force, helped draft legislation requiring financial institutions to report suspicious activity involving seniors, testified before the city council in a room that smelled of old wood and nervous sweat. My pain had found purpose. The boundaries I'd set were non-negotiable. Clara was not welcome at family events. Any future contact required advance request and supervision. Full restitution was mandatory, and even after every penny was repaid, forgiveness wasn't guaranteed. Boundaries aren't punishment, I told Michael when he worried I was being too harsh. They're protection. One evening, I sat in my garden watching golden light paint the lavender. The plants I'd put in the ground a year ago had flourished, fragrant and resilient. I thought about Richard. Would he be proud of how I'd handled this? Yes, I decided, because I'd fought for truth without drowning in vengeance. I wasn't the same woman I'd been 2 years ago. I was stronger, but sadder. Wiser, but more guarded. Last week, Patricia sent me a letter. Her son, the one who'd stolen $300,000, had completed rehab, found a job, and made his first restitution payment. $200. Because of your story, I had the courage to set boundaries, she wrote. Thank you. I'd cried reading it. Good tears, the kind that water something growing inside you. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone. A courier stood on the porch holding a small padded envelope. I signed for it, closed the door, and opened it at the kitchen table. Inside, $1,200 bills, crisply folded, and a note in Clara's careful handwriting. Month 13, I will never stop making this right. I stood holding the money, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the first seed of it. We'll see, Clara, I whispered to the empty room. We'll see. I don't know if Clara and I will ever have a relationship again, but I've learned that healing doesn't require reconciliation. It just requires truth.